we do know that Prince William is very capable of being the bigger man and taking the high road. You may remember following Prince Philip's funeral, we did see the brothers walking up the hill back towards Windsor Castle, shoulder to shoulder. Again, just a couple of months later, they appeared together for the unveiling of the Diana statue. And then in 2022, just ahead of the Queen's funeral, both brothers did appear with their wives in Windsor to greet mourners, to look at the flowers. So I think William is very capable of being perfectly civil, but I do think that everybody collectively is going to have to get rid of this romanticized idea of the brothers coming back together. I don't think it's going to be that simple. Inevitably, at some point, their paths are going to cross, whether that's in a private capacity, on-stage capacity. I couldn't say at this point, but I think we're a long ways off that yet. There has been so much hurt caused, tremendous hurt. But what we see with William and Catherine in particular is they never rise to any of it. They haven't responded to the bait. They haven't responded to the agonizing stories that have been perpetuated online by many of the Sussex's most ardent fans. They just don't enter into tit for tat. And I think that is a lesson that William learned very early on, watching the old famous, which Charlie will remember, the War of the Waleses that played out across those newspapers many moons ago. We're not going to see a repeat of that. I think the way William and Catherine are going to handle this is just by getting their heads down, getting on with the job and doing what it is they do. I think they recognize that if they're suddenly seen together, well, all that's going to do is fuel the narrative. How close were they together? Did they speak together? Did they look across? That just perpetuates this soap opera. So certainly I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to see two brothers conducting their individual lives and hopefully perhaps talking behind the scenes, but hopefully those conversations will remain private and we won't see any kind of public appearance until they're both ready.
You raised such a good point there about the fact that they may find themselves at some point in a room just outside of their control with the family events, because actually I think the last time they were in a room together was at the funeral of their uncle. You know, things like that tragically will bring them together inevitably along the line. And you're right that it is going to fuel the narrative if they're seen together. But from a more PR perspective, Charlie, do you think that there would be any benefit in even just making it appear that there is some sort of truce or agreement between them? Or do you think it's better, as Victoria says, to just stay well away?
Well, I agree with Victoria, to be perfectly honest. Look, lots of families, whether they're blue-blooded or not, have rows. And it lasts for years and years and years. And sometimes, eventually, there'll be a thaw. I can't see a thaw happening immediately between William and Harry. I agree there will probably come a time where they will have to be in the same room or be within the 3 feet of each other. And I think William and Harry will both be civil to each other. And that will we see any brotherly love? No, I don't think so. And I don't think there's that William's ready to forgive and forget the horrible things that Harry has said about various members of the family, especially his wife. Now, the one thing you don't do is you don't trash a man's wife and, you know, and get away with it. That's verboten. It's absolutely not going to thaw anything.
And, well, I guess still on this, more broadly, there's speculation about what happens at Christmas. You know, when the family goes to Sandringham, and even with the summer holidays, you know, Harry's previously described Balmoral, that royal summer holiday, as paradise when he was a kid. Do you think there's any chance that they will at least be invited to any of these occasions, whether it be this year or next year if they're still here?
I think those are going to be ongoing conversations, and I think much is going to depend on how the Sussex's arrival goes when they first get back. It would be wise if they came with a little grace, a little humility, perhaps a little contrition, and also how it is that they choose to behave moving forwards over the next few months. Are they going to usurp royal engagements? Are they going to agree to step back and observe the royal model and the fact that the king has got a very delicate balance on his hand? His job, first and foremost, is to protect the institution of monarchy. And so I think it would be wise if Harry and Meghan did observe the king's calendar and tried not to overshadow what was going on. But back to Christmas, I think it'll be interesting to see how these relations go. If I were Harry and Meghan, I'm not sure I'd want to be sitting across the table from someone like Princess Anne just yet. She's very pragmatic, and I think she'll have been very upset about a lot of the things that were said, particularly as Prince Philip was dying and then her mother was dying. Harry famously turned down an invitation by the Queen to visit her in the summer of 2022 ahead of her death. I'm not sure he's going to be ready to return to Balmoral just yet. So I think there's a huge number of steps, baby steps, that have to be achieved first. So while we're all going to be watching fascinated and wondering, are they going to be on that famous walk to church this Christmas? I'd be surprised. They've got a good excuse to go home and see Grandma Doria for Christmas. They won't have seen her for a little while. That solves this Christmas. It gives them a whole year then to work towards next Christmas.
That's a good strategy, actually. I hope they're watching the show. I think you've nailed that. So there's, as I said, there's so much to unpack with this news from last week, but we'll move on to another piece of the Sussex UK puzzle. To recap, so I broke the story last week that Meghan is planning a return to acting. What I've been told is that there are a number of offers on the table she's considering, but there was one UK production, obviously being filmed here, that she was particularly excited about. And to me, because this news was quite surprising that they were moving back, it was a part of the puzzle to me of what Meghan was going to be doing here. But for anyone that missed the drama over the weekend, shortly after that, Deadline confirmed that it was The Gentleman, the Netflix show that is created by Guy Ritchie. But then ex-Vanity Fair editor Tina Brown tweeted that the deal had been withdrawn due to UK backlash, which sparked a real flurry of media speculation. Where it sits now, days on, is that I'm being told nothing has changed. The conversations, there have been no deals signed. But the conversations are ongoing exactly as they were last week when I first reported it. That could change before the show comes out. The Gentleman has been renewed for season 3, which is a crucial step. But with all of this going on, you know, there's deals fall apart all the time, Charlie. But more broadly, if this comes to pass, what do you think of this career pivot by Meghan back into acting?
Well, it's interesting because I'm reading this morning that season 2 of The Gentleman is going to be released on Netflix on September the 3rd. Now, interestingly, they've got a girl on there called Maya Jama, who's quite big for Love Island, has never had an acting job before, so this is going to be her first acting job. Is there going to be room for Meghan in series 3? Yeah, why not? I mean, to get Meghan in a programme, whether it's The Gentleman or something, that is a great publicity coup for whoever it is that organises that particular programme. So, yeah, I'm still hearing, like you, that the talks are still on, and it could well be that she will be doing, acting. If you remember, when she first went into the royal family, it was the Queen herself who said, look, if you want to carry on acting, carry on acting. You know, Meghan was the one who said, no, because I'm going to be a royal superstar, which she was at the start, and then it all suddenly fell apart. So she's going back to, her base, if you like, of acting. If it's correct that I agree with you that these programs come along. And there's lots of talks, there's lots of leaks, there's all sorts of things that come up, and we only ever know whether it's real or not when we actually see that person on screen. And I think that's going to happen with Meghan.
Yes, I mean, it's just more broadly in entertainment, actors have actually turned up on set and still been fired after the first few days. So when the show comes out, we'll know it's happened. But as it stands, as you say, Meghan will apparently be season 3. And as I said, the fact the season has been greenlit in the middle of this little storm, amazing marketing by Netflix, well done. But that's obviously a crucial step. Victoria, it has been reported that any acting deal Meghan signs, for example, The Gentleman, could be worth over £1 million for her. So that's obviously a lucrative job for her to be stepping back into. And Charlie's touched on it there, but for a streaming service or a studio, Meghan is obviously a polarising figure. Do you think that the return on investment is going to be worth it? Do you think that it will encourage people to watch the show whether they like her or don't like her? Or as Tina Brown initially wrote, do you think it would be something that would spark backlash that they would be afraid of?
Well, first of all, epic scoop, Bronte. That was an amazing scoop. And actually, for me, it solved the final piece of the puzzle because until Meghan was in the UK just this last July, she hadn't been back on British soil since the Queen's funeral over 4 years before. So I was wondering what is in it for her, beyond loving her husband and wanting him to be able to spend more time with his family. To answer your question, I think Guy Ritchie's not going to be remotely fazed about backlash. He's a classic newsjacker. He's very, very smart when it comes to marketing. Everybody's talking about The Gentleman this week. Charlie just pointed out the day that it drops. I mean, could it be better in terms of marketing? We do know that Meghan is part of the Netflix family, so this works in terms of cross-promotion. But we also know, certainly from the first season of With Love Meghan, whether people love her or hate her, there is endless fascination. Her fans would tune in if she were opening an envelope. They would say it was the best opening of an envelope they had ever seen in all their lives. But equally, there are people who are curious. They just want to see, what will it be like? How will she be cast? What kind of scenes will she be taking part in? So I think the question will be whether or not she's able to sustain the audience. It's one thing for the first couple of episodes to do really, really well, but she's going to have to knock it out of the park. And in this instance, that's very nerve-wracking, I would say, for any actor, knowing that you're going to be judged and everyone's going to be talking about you on social media. I mean, she's used to that at this point, but it would certainly got to get a huge amount of attention. And I think it would be a fabulous marketing tool for whoever landed her for their project. So yes, I think it'll bring a lot of eyeballs to begin with. That itself is incredibly valuable, but then it's going to be whether or not she can sustain that audience. With Love, Meghan didn't. So this is going to need sort of the added team around it, and Guy Ritchie's very popular. So maybe that's the way to do it, have a smaller part in a bigger production.
I'm so glad you raised that point about the intrigue, because of course there would be a burst, whether even people that hate her would want to see what it was like, particularly because she's in a creative space. There's a vulnerability to that for her. She's really going to be putting herself out there. So I'm glad you raised that because that is what's going to be so interesting to see if she can sustain it with her performance. Now, onto the more logistics part of it, Charlie. Guy Ritchie, I love Guy Ritchie's work, I've got to say. If she's managed to land a role in a Guy Ritchie show, well done. He's quite risque, though. A lot of his work and the dialogue and the storylines, he pushes the boundaries. What kind of role do you think Meghan would? I'm told she's really excited about whatever this is. What kind of role do you think would be enticing her back into acting, and what should she do?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, what type of role? We don't know what she's going to be doing, but there is some suggestion that she's going to end up being the love interest of one of the main characters who's in the show. That could well be the case. I mean, how's Harry going to be feeling it like watching that on television?
He said he hated it in Suits when she had love
exactly.
scenes. You're right to say that.
He did not like it in Suits at all. So that'll be very interesting. It's hard to say what she's going to do when we don't know what the role is or what the part is at the moment.
I mean, should she play it safe, or do you think that she'll do something a little bit more out there? And should she?
I even if she's in one or two of the episodes, I agree with everything you two guys have said. Is that it will attract so many of an audience. There'll be those who love Meghan and she can't do any wrong, and there will be those who will be watching it and hate Meghan because she's Meghan. I mean, but it will be a hit. The publicity that it's going to generate is worth its weight in gold. There is no question about that. And it's whoever it is that's leaked it, whether it's Meghan's side that's leaked it or Guy Ritchie's side that's leaked it, it's a brilliant ploy.
I have seen the way that Netflix has harnessed it, as I said, the last few days. It really has been the most talked about show in the world, which is incredible. Victoria,
Wow.
I think this story did come as quite a surprise to many, myself included, because she said only in 2022 to Variety that she really had no interest in ever returning to acting. And obviously 4 years on, here we are. What do you think this says about her US-based businesses, and particularly, I mean, As Ever, for example? Do you think that indicates to you about how all that's going?
Well, it's just feeding one of the many surprises, isn't it? Because friends and even friendly royal journalists with books that will remain nameless have said that Meghan would never return to the UK, and yet here she is returning to the UK. So I think what this says is Hollywood is a very fickle town, and I think it has been challenging. I did see one brilliant editorial the other day. I'm sorry, I can't remember who wrote it, so I can't give them credit, but it was talking about the fact that so many people might be good in one particular sphere. So they turn up in Hollywood and and think, well, I can do that, and I can bring my fame from this element into this element, and it doesn't work. Hollywood is also famously allergic to any kind of negativity, and so I think the well has run dry a little bit in the US, and so perhaps coming home and reigniting that interest for Harry, he gets to do that in terms of his charitable work. Meghan gets to do that by reigniting and redusting herself with the royal adjacency Stardust.